Once regarded as insignificant, humans have become the gravitational force pulling us into disorder. General CRD's voice resonated throughout the Galactic Council chamber, his frilled neck scales quivering with concern. The assembled delegates of the Empire's most powerful species gazed down at him from their luxurious seats. Behind them, holographic projections of star charts and battle reports flickered. "You overstate the matter, General," mocked Counselor VCK, a sleek-furred representative of the High Dominion. "Their fleet hardly amounts to a tactical annoyance." "That's exactly what we all thought." CRD struck the base of his podium, sending a sharp pulse of cyan light rippling through the chamber. "Until their so-called nuisance dismantled our 7th Armada. Their cleverness is alarming." Counselor Mir, whose crystalline skin emitted a soft glow, shifted in his seat. "Clarify, General. How could a species that discovered faster-than-light travel only a century ago possibly defeat one of our most advanced fleets?" CRD tightened his jaw. He despised presenting reports to bureaucrats, but the situation demanded it. With a gesture, he activated a holographic display. The final battle of the 7th Armada unfolded before the Council, depicted in stark, clinical detail. "We encountered their fleet in Sector Z. Initial scans revealed primitive vessels, crude reactors, armor plating that seemed haphazardly assembled, and negligible offensive capabilities. Admiral Vull dismissed them, a critical mistake." The recording showed the human fleet, a mix of blocky, mismatched ships diving into a dense asteroid field. Empire cruisers pursued, their energy weapons slicing through the debris with precision. "At first, we thought it was desperation. They lacked the firepower to confront us directly. But then," CRD pointed as the image zoomed in, "a human ship veered dangerously close to a gas giant, its engines straining. Moments later, it released an explosive payload into the planet's atmosphere." The Council murmured in surprise. "They ignited a volatile gas pocket within the giant's atmosphere," CRD explained. "The resulting shockwave disrupted our formation, forcing us to scatter. That's when they struck." The playback continued. "Amid the chaos, the humans' improvised ships moved with startling accuracy, exploiting gaps in the Empire's defenses. Swarms of small, swift, and oddly shaped vessels attacked critical points like hornets stinging a predator. Their fighters were patched-together crafts with experimental shields and weapons, yet they disabled 2 of our cruisers before we could regroup." Counselor Varric smirked. "A fortunate improvisation." CRD turned sharply toward him. "Improvisation, perhaps, but luck? Certainly not. They deliberately lured us into the gas giant's orbit, knowing the environment would favor their hit-and-run tactics. Do you realize how long it would take our war colleges to develop a similar strategy? Years. They achieved it in mere hours." Silence fell over the chamber. Even Varric looked uneasy. "But that was just the beginning," CRD continued. "What happened next was even more concerning. A new recording began to play, a seized human transmission. On the screen, a man in a worn flight suit smirked at the camera, a banner with a roughly drawn fist displayed behind him. "To the esteemed Galactic Empire," he started, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "Appreciate the warm welcome. We thought it would be rude to arrive unannounced without bringing a little fireworks show. Hope you enjoyed it as much as we did." The council chamber seethed with indignation. "They refer to this as psychological warfare," General Sirdi explained, his frills flattening in frustration. "It serves no strategic purpose other than to insult and provoke. Yet it works. Morale among our fleets plummeted after this message spread." "And you're intimidated by this?" Varric scoffed. "No," CRD replied coldly. "I'm concerned about what followed." The hologram transitioned to an image of a human warship, grotesque in its asymmetry. "Our intelligence indicates that humans don't just adapt our strategies, they merge them. They've already incorporated our shield technology into their fleet, combining it with their crude vessels to create something unpredictably unique. Copying isn't innovating," Counselor Mir argued. "Then how do you explain this?" CRD retorted, pulling up detailed logs of a recent skirmish. "They've developed a weapon that temporarily disrupts the subspace channels we rely on for communications. Not perfected yet, but dangerous nonetheless. And it's derived from our own designs, captured during their raids. That's enough," declared Supreme Arbiter Zerth from his elevated throne. His massive, chitinous form leaned forward, casting an imposing shadow. "You present a compelling case, General, but we must not overestimate these primitives. The Empire has faced countless foes before and prevailed. With respect, Arbiter, we've never encountered anything like this," CRD insisted. "Humans don't fight to win, they fight to survive. That makes them unpredictable, irrational, and and, dare I say, dangerous. The Arbiter regarded CRD thoughtfully. CRD took a deep breath. We should cease all hostilities. Initiate negotiations. Accept them into the Empire as a protected species before they escalate this conflict further. The chamber erupted in laughter. Negotiate with them? VCK exclaimed, his tail flicking in amusement. Mir's crystalline features shimmered with amusement. They wouldn't last a standard cycle under Imperial rule, CRD sighed. That's what we all thought, too. 3 weeks after CRD's dire warning, the Empire chose to demonstrate its dominance. Ignoring his concerns, the Council launched Operation Hammerfall, a full-scale offensive aimed at obliterating humanity's fledgling fleet. The remnants of the 7th Armada were reinforced with a battle group of dreadnoughts, cruisers, and carriers. It was the Empire's largest display of force in centuries. Admiral Loris, a battle-hardened veteran, stood on the bridge of the Invictus, the fleet's flagship. His armada emerged from hyperspace, the azure shimmer of subspace dissipating to reveal a small, barren star system. The humans are cornered, he announced confidently. We'll sweep them from this galaxy before they become a real threat. Admiral, sensors detect the human fleet near the 3rd planet, his tactical officer reported. Approximately 30 vessels detected. Configurations are inconsistent, the tactical officer reported. Admiral Loris sneered. Just as I thought, nothing but piles of scrap. Charge weapons and move forward. The Imperial fleet pushed ahead, its formation precise and unyielding. In stark contrast, the human ships seemed dispersed and chaotic. The Invictus's targeting systems locked onto a leading vessel, a bulky, angular frigate hobbling along as if its engines were failing. Commence firing, Loris commanded. A volley of plasma bolts erupted from the Invictus, slicing through the vacuum of space. The frigate made no attempt to dodge. It exploded in a dazzling flash, fragments of molten metal spiraling into the void. Pitiful, Loris muttered. I was hoping for a challenge. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet, the communications officer announced. Let them plead, Loris said with a smug grin. Put it on the screen. The holographic display flickered, revealing a human captain seated on what appeared to be a simple metal folding chair. Behind him, wires dangled from exposed panels, and a hand-painted sign reading Persistence Command Center was taped to the wall. Admiral Loris, I presume, the human said, lounging casually. Captain Rick Travers at your disposal. Nice shot back there. You owe me a new ship. Loris frowned deeply. Your arrogance will be your undoing, human. Oh, I'm well aware, Rick replied, scratching his scruffy chin. But before you decide to vaporize us, there's something you should know. And what might that be? Loris asked impatiently. Rick's eyes gleamed. You're currently sitting in a minefield. Before Loris could react, the tactical officer shouted urgently, Admiral, subspace mines detonating along our flanks. Explosions ripped through the fleet's formation as hidden mines, previously undetected and concealed within subspace folds, detonated rapidly. Several Imperial frigates were obliterated instantly, their hulls no match for the intense blasts. How is this possible? Loris bellowed. Sir, the human ships must have deployed them during their retreat, the tactical officer explained, scrambling to understand the unfolding chaos. They predicted our approach. Loris slammed his clawed hand onto the console. Regroup immediately. Shield the carriers. But the humans had more in store. Emerging from the asteroid belt surrounding the 3rd planet was a swarm of small, agile fighters, cobbled together from scavenged materials. They weaved through the disorganized Imperial fleet with reckless daring, unleashing improvised weapons that wreaked havoc on the larger ship's unshielded sections. Aboard the Persistence, Rick leaned back as his communications officer delivered an update. Captain, we've taken out 3 cruisers and disabled a dreadnought's targeting systems. Excellent progress, Rick said with a satisfied nod. Time to strike a decisive blow. Signal the Betsy. The Betsy was, to put it mildly, an unimpressive vessel, a mining barge converted for warfare, with armor plates haphazardly welded to its hull and engines that sputtered like they might give out at any moment. Yet, it carried a payload unlike anything the Empire had ever seen, the quantum destabilizer, a weapon born from human ingenuity and a fair amount of madness. As the Betsy accelerated toward the Invictus, Rick initiated a private channel to Admiral Loris. Hey, Admiral, just a friendly tip. You might want to brace yourself for what's coming, he said casually. Loris growled, what are you? Before he could finish, the Betsy unleashed its weapon. The quantum destabilizer was neither sophisticated nor precise, but its effect was catastrophic. A swirling maelstrom of energy erupted, collapsing the nearby subspace fields and nullifying the Invictus's shields. The flagship convulsed violently as systems overloaded, sparks flying from console consoles and bulkheads. Shields are down, the tactical officer shouted. That's impossible, Loris roared in disbelief. Not impossible, Rick's voice crackled over the comms. Just human ingenuity. The Invictus was compelled to retreat, dragging the remnants of the once mighty fleet with it. As the Empire's ships limped away, Rick turned to his crew, who burst into cheers. Great job, everyone, Rick said with a grin. Now let's repair the Betsy and figure out exactly what we did. I'm pretty sure that explosion wasn't part of the plan. The Galactic Council reconvened in a somber mood. The crushing defeat of Admiral Loris and the Empire's most formidable fleet weighed heavily on the assembly. Holographic displays showed images of disabled cruisers, drifting wreckage, and the battered Invictus returning to Imperial space. General CRD stood once more at the central podium, his teeth clicking with a mix of vindication and frustration. I cautioned you, he began, but you dismissed them as insignificant. Now humanity is not just a nuisance, but a legitimate threat. VCK, appearing far less confident than before, leaned forward. What do you recommend we do? Surely their fortune will run out. Luck isn't a factor here, CRD snapped. They thrive in disorder. Their very nature defies our strategic doctrines. If we don't adapt, we will be defeated. The chamber erupted into chaotic debate, voices overlapping as representatives argued. We need to escalate our efforts, one shouted. Initiate planetary bombardments, another demanded. Fools, CRD roared, bringing the room to silence. They infiltrated our communications and transmitted music. One of our crews even filed a formal complaint about psychological distress caused by something they refer to as heavy metal. Psychological warfare, murmured Counselor Mir. Precisely, and they relish it, CRD affirmed. A heavy silence settled over the council as the reality of the situation sank in. Finally, the Supreme Arbiter spoke. If direct conflict is ineffective, what alternative do you propose? Before CRD could reply, a holographic transmission interrupted the meeting. Captain Rick Travers appeared, lounging casually in his improvised command chair. Apologies for dropping in on your meeting, Rick said with a sly smile. We thought it courteous to let you know what's coming. How dare you? Varric exclaimed. Yeah, spare me the outrage, Rick replied, waving dismissively. Here's the proposition. You leave us in peace, and we'll do the same for you. Fair deal, right? You possess no leverage, human, Mir stated coldly. Rick's grin widened. Oh, I wouldn't be so sure about that. Recall that subspace disruptor we used on your flagship? We've been busy producing more. CRD's frills stiffened. You're bluffing. Your technology is still undeveloped. Are you certain about that? Rick raised an eyebrow. Why don't you take a look out your windows? The ceiling of the council chamber transformed, unveiling the vast expanse of stars above. Numerous human ships hovered just beyond the Empire's orbital defenses, their jury-rigged designs starkly contrasting the Empire's polished and sophisticated vessels. One enormous ship, a chaotic assemblage with mismatched engines, suddenly discharged a beam into the void. Moments later, a nearby moon shattered into a cloud of dust and debris. The chamber erupted into chaos, with representatives shouting and gesturing frantically. All right, everyone, calm down, Rick said, his voice cutting through the turmoil. That was just a demonstration. Next time, we'll target something more significant. The Supreme Arbiter rose, his colossal form casting an imposing shadow. You dare to threaten the Empire? He thundered. Rick leaned closer to the camera, his demeanor turning serious. We don't seek this conflict, but if you insist on bringing it to us, we'll make sure you regret it. Humans don't back down. We adapt, we improvise, and we refuse to play by your rules. So, what's your decision? The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. They destroyed a moon, Varric whispered, his fur standing on end. An uninhabited one, CRD interjected. General, the Arbiter said gravely, what is your assessment? CRD hesitated. Their display was meant to intimidate, but I believe their actual capabilities are still limited. However, they've shown they can weaponize even their weaknesses. Underestimating them further would be catastrophic. Then we must consider their terms, Mir admitted reluctantly. Consider? VCK hissed. Are you suggesting we yield to them? CRD's voice cut through the rising dissent. This isn't surrender, it's survival. Humans don't need to achieve total victory, they just need to make the conflict too costly to continue. That's their strategy now, and unless we're willing to drain our resources, we need to rethink our approach. The Supreme Arbiter nodded slowly. Initiate negotiations negotiations discreetly. If we can integrate humanity peacefully, we may turn this situation to our advantage. Aboard the Persistence, Rick leaned back with a satisfied grin as the Council's reply came through. "They're sending negotiators," his communications officer announced. "Excellent," Rick said. "Let's make sure we charge them double for everything. And someone look into whether we can weaponize Disco next, just in case." The bridge erupted in laughter as humanity's most formidable weapon, their audacity, secured yet another victory.